California's volcano story is often told through the towering silhouette of Mount Shasta, the snow-capped giant that dominates the northern skyline and captures most of the public's attention whenever volcanic danger is discussed. Its immense size, steep slopes, and visible volcanic form make it the natural focus of concern. But what if the volcano posing one of California's most underestimated threats is not the towering peak everyone watches? What if the state's most active volcanic system lies hidden in a barren geothermal basin, surrounded not by snow and forests, but by mudpots, seismic swarms, toxic gases, and some of the fastest ground deformation in the western United States? And what if the volcanic field with one of the highest hazard designations in the nation is sitting beside vital energy infrastructure, major transportation routes, and hundreds of thousands of residents? Far from the iconic volcanic peaks of Northern California lies the Salton Buttes volcanic field, a cluster of lava domes rising from the southern shore of the Salton Sea in Imperial County. At first glance, the landscape looks more like a geothermal wasteland than a volcanic threat. The domes are low and rugged, standing only a few hundred feet above the desert floor, with the highest reaching roughly 300 feet, or around 90 meters above the surrounding basin. There is no towering cone, no dramatic summit, no visible plume. Yet beneath this quiet terrain sits one of the most geologically active volcanic regions in California, a place where tectonic stretching, rising magma, intense geothermal activity, and frequent earthquakes combine to create a volcanic system that remains very much alive. The Salton Buttes are part of the larger Salton Trough, a tectonic depression extending from southern California into the Gulf of California. This region marks the northern end of an active continental rift zone where the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate are gradually pulling apart. The movement is not rapid by human standards, but over geological time it is relentless. The crust here is thinning as the plates slide and stretch, allowing heat from deep within the Earth to rise closer to the surface. This process creates a setting where magma can accumulate at relatively shallow depths, heating groundwater, triggering earthquakes, and periodically erupting to form new volcanic features. Unlike California's better-known stratovolcanoes, such as Mount Shasta or Lassen Peak, the Salton Buttes are rhyolitic lava domes. Rhyolite is a silica-rich volcanic rock formed from viscous magma that tends to trap gases, making eruptions potentially explosive. The 5 domes that make up the Salton Buttes, Mullet Island, Obsidian Butte, Rock Hill, North Red Hill, and South Red Hill, were formed by eruptions occurring within the last few thousand years, making them the youngest volcanic eruptions in Southern California. Geologically speaking, young means potentially active. The most recent eruptions at Salton Buttes occurred approximately 1800 years ago, placing them well within the time range that volcanologists consider active. Volcanoes do not need to erupt every few decades to remain dangerous. Some systems can remain quiet for thousands of years between eruptions, especially in tectonically complex rift environments where magma recharge is gradual but persistent. The long silence at Salton Buttes is not proof of extinction. Instead, it may represent the dormant phase of a living volcanic system. The evidence that the system remains active is visible across the region. The Salton geothermal field, adjacent to the volcanic domes, is one of the most powerful geothermal systems in the United States. Beneath the surface, hot brines exceeding 500 degrees Fahrenheit, or more than 260 degrees Celsius, circulate through fractured rock, powered by the heat of shallow magmatic sources. This geothermal reservoir fuels energy plants that produce electricity for California's grid, but it also confirms that molten or recently molten material exists beneath the area. Earthquake activity provides another sign of unrest. The Imperial Valley and Salton Sea regions experience constant seismicity, including earthquake swarms, clusters of small quakes occurring over short periods without a single dominant main shock. These swarms can indicate fluid movement underground, fault adjustment, or magmatic intrusion. While not every swarm signals an eruption, repeated seismic unrest in volcanic regions is a sign that the crust is under active stress. Ground deformation adds to the concern. Satellite measurements have shown uplift and subsidence patterns in the Salton Buttes area, indicating that the ground is rising and sinking as underground fluids and magmatic pressures change. This breathing of the Earth's surface is common in active volcanic systems. In the Salton Trough, deformation is amplified by the combination of tectonic extension, hydrothermal circulation, and possible magma movement at depth. Even small changes in elevation can signal major shifts in subsurface conditions. These geological realities are why the United States Geological Survey assigns the Salton Buttes a high threat ranking in its National Volcanic Hazard Assessment. The ranking does not mean an eruption is imminent. It means the volcano combines active geological processes with exposure risks that could create serious consequences if unrest escalates. The United States Geological Survey threat ranking system considers multiple factors: the likelihood of future eruptions, the type of hazards expected, and the population and infrastructure at risk. Salton Buttes scores high because it has erupted recently in geological terms, contains an active hydrothermal system, experiences ongoing seismicity, and sits near critical infrastructure. Major highways, rail corridors, agricultural networks, geothermal energy facilities, and growing population centres all lie within the hazard zone. The surrounding Imperial Valley is one of the most productive agricultural regions in the United States, supplying significant portions of the nation's winter vegetables. The valley depends on irrigation canals, transport systems, and energy infrastructure that could be severely disrupted by volcanic unrest. Ashfall from even a modest rhyolitic eruption could blanket roads, clog irrigation systems, damage machinery, contaminate water channels, and halt transportation. The geothermal plants near the Salton Sea present an additional vulnerability. These facilities tap directly into the superheated subsurface environment, producing renewable electricity by extracting heat from underground brines. A sudden increase in seismic activity, hydrothermal explosions, or volcanic deformation could damage wells, pipelines, turbines, and electrical systems. Because geothermal infrastructure is concentrated close to the volcanic source, it faces direct risk from unrest. The hazard itself would likely look very different from the explosive eruptions most people imagine. Salton Buttes is not expected to produce towering lava fountains or massive lava flows like Hawaii's shield volcanoes. Instead, the greatest threats are likely to come from explosive rhyolitic eruptions, hydrothermal blasts, ashfall, toxic gas release, and localized lava dome growth. Rhyolitic magma is thick and gas-rich. When pressure builds, gas can become trapped until it is released violently. This can generate explosive eruptions that send ash columns thousands of feet into the air. Even a relatively small eruption could spread ash across Southern California and Arizona, depending on wind conditions. Volcanic ash is not soft soot, it is made of tiny shards of rock and glass. It can abrade engines, damage crops, disrupt aviation, and create respiratory hazards. Hydrothermal explosions may be an even more immediate risk. These occur when superheated groundwater flashes into steam, blasting rock and debris outward without fresh magma necessarily reaching the surface. In geothermal areas, such explosions can happen suddenly if underground pressure conditions shift. Given the intense hydrothermal activity at Salton Buttes, this hazard cannot be ignored. Toxic gas emissions pose another serious concern. Carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide already escape naturally in parts of the geothermal field. In greater concentrations, these gases can become dangerous to humans and animals, especially in low-lying areas where gases accumulate. A surge in degassing could force evacuations even before any eruption occurs. The ranking of California's most dangerous volcanoes often surprises the public because the greatest threats are not based solely on eruption size. Mount Shasta ranks among the highest because of its eruption history and lahar hazards. Long Valley Caldera ranks high due to its massive magma system and history of unrest. Lassen Volcanic Center is also considered dangerous because of its hydrothermal and explosive potential. Salton Buttes earns its place among these giants not because of size, but because of activity and vulnerability. Its proximity to infrastructure gives it an outsized hazard footprint. A relatively modest eruption in this region could trigger cascading failures across power systems, agriculture, water management, and transportation. The combination of active tectonics and volcanic potential means hazards may not remain isolated to the eruption site. Earthquake swarms could damage infrastructure before any eruption begins, while ashfall and gas emissions could spread impacts across a wide area. The tectonic setting makes the region especially dynamic. The Salton Trough is essentially the landward extension of the Gulf of California's spreading center. Here, the crust is being stretched apart while transform faults accommodate plate motion. This creates fractures that allow magma and hot fluids to migrate upward. In geological terms, this environment resembles the early stages of ocean basin formation. Over millions of years, continued rifting could eventually reshape the region dramatically. For now, it means persistent volcanic and seismic unrest. That unrest has become increasingly important because of human development around the Salton Sea. Energy projects, lithium extraction plans, expanding logistics routes, and dense agricultural operations are increasing the stakes. The Salton geothermal region contains lithium-rich brines that are being targeted as a domestic source for battery production. This economic development places even more critical infrastructure near an active volcanic system. As California pushes deeper into renewable energy and mineral extraction in the Imperial Valley, the hidden volcanic hazards of Salton Buttes become more significant. The same underground heat that powers geothermal energy and concentrates lithium is also evidence of a live magmatic system. Economic opportunity and geological risk are intertwined in this landscape. The public focus remains on California's dramatic volcanoes, but the quiet geology beneath the Salton Sea tells a different story. Here, volcanic danger is not measured by height or visibility. It is measured by heat flow, seismic unrest, crustal deformation, explosive potential, and exposure. By those measures, Salton Buttes is not a relic of the past. It is one of the most active volcanic systems in the state, concealed in plain sight within one of California's most strategically important regions. And the deeper scientists examine this volcanic field, the clearer it becomes that the real threat is not what rises above the desert floor, but what continues moving beneath it. The greatest danger posed by the Salton Buttes is not merely that it could erupt again, but that an eruption in this location would strike at one of the most infrastructure-sensitive and economically critical regions in the American Southwest. Unlike remote volcanic systems, where hazards remain largely confined to wilderness areas, Salton Buttes sits amid a dense network of agricultural assets, geothermal facilities, transportation corridors, energy developments, and communities whose economic survival depends on uninterrupted operation. The volcanic field may appear small and geologically quiet at the surface, but the consequences of renewed activity would reach far beyond the domes themselves. A future eruption at Salton Buttes would most likely begin with signals that could easily be mistaken for routine tectonic unrest. Earthquake swarms would intensify beneath the southern Salton Sea region, likely increasing in both frequency and magnitude over days or weeks. In a region already accustomed to seismic activity, distinguishing ordinary fault movement from volcanic unrest would be a challenge in the early stages. Yet, if magma were rising through the crust, those quakes would gradually become shallower, clustering beneath the volcanic field as pressure built in the rock above the magma body. At the same time, the ground around the volcanic field would likely begin to deform. Satellite instruments could detect uplift measured in inches or centimeters as magma forced the surface upward. New fractures might open across parts of the geothermal field, and hydrothermal areas could show increased venting, stronger gas emissions, and rising subsurface temperatures. Steam eruptions might occur before magma even reaches the surface, creating violent hydrothermal explosions that hurl mud, rock, and superheated water across the landscape. Those early hydrothermal blasts could damage geothermal plants, sewer pipelines, and shut down electricity generation across the Salton geothermal field. Because these facilities rely on carefully controlled pressure systems, even modest geological disturbances could halt operations. Wells tapping deep, superheated brines would become vulnerable to casing failure, and pipelines carrying corrosive fluids could rupture underground movement. In an area where renewable geothermal energy plays a growing role in California's power supply, these disruptions would carry statewide consequences. If magma reached the surface, the eruption style would likely be explosive rather than effusive. The silica-rich rhyolitic magma beneath Salton Buttes is too viscous to flow easily. Instead, gases dissolved within the magma would remain trapped until pressure forced a violent release. The result could be an ash-producing eruption column rising several miles into the atmosphere, spreading fine volcanic debris across the Imperial Valley and beyond. The danger is heightened by the basin topography around the Salton Sea. The low-lying geography can trap gases and airborne particulates, allowing harmful concentrations to accumulate. Carbon dioxide, heavier than air, may settle in depressions, while hydrogen sulfide can spread toxic odours and hazardous air conditions. Emergency planners would face a complex multi-hazard event involving seismic instability, toxic gas, infrastructure disruption, and potential eruptive activity. Compared with California's other major volcanoes, Salton Buttes presents a uniquely concentrated hazard. Mount Shasta is larger and capable of enormous eruptions, but its surrounding infrastructure is relatively sparse. Long Valley Caldera contains a vast magmatic system, but its most hazardous zones are more geographically dispersed. Salton Buttes combines moderate eruptive potential with dense economic exposure. That combination is exactly why the United States Geological Survey places such a high threat designation on the volcanic field. Threat rankings are based on more than eruption size. They account for the probability of renewed activity, the style of expected hazards, and the vulnerability of nearby people and infrastructure. Salton Buttes scores high because it sits in an area where even a modest eruption could produce outsized disruption. Ashfall, hydrothermal explosions, gas emissions and earthquake swarms in this location could damage agriculture, energy, water systems, mineral production and transportation all at once. Another factor that raises the risk profile is the rapid pace of crustal extension beneath the Salton Trough. This is one of the few places in the continental United States where active rifting is thinning the crust in real time. The tectonic forces that created the Gulf of California are still propagating northward through this basin, continually generating fractures and pathways for magma movement. That active extension keeps the volcanic system viable. Geothermal heat flow in the region remains among the highest in North America, indicating that the crust beneath Salton Buttes is still being heated from below. This is not residual warmth from an ancient extinct system. It is ongoing heat transport from an active tectono-magmatic environment. Every earthquake swarm, every pressure change in the geothermal field, and every episode of ground deformation is evidence that the system remains dynamic. The reason Salton Buttes receives less public attention than Mount Shasta or Lassen is largely visual. People associate volcanic danger with dramatic mountains, steep slopes and visible peaks. Salton Buttes offers none of those visual cues. The domes are modest in elevation, rising only a few hundred feet above a desert basin already marked by industrial infrastructure and geothermal development. To the casual observer, the area looks industrial rather than volcanic. That visual understatement masks real danger. A small rhyolitic dome complex with active geothermal systems can be far more hazardous than a towering, dormant stratovolcano. The greatest threat comes not from appearance, but from geological behavior. Salton Buttes has recent eruptions, active heat flow, crustal deformation, seismic swarms, and intense human exposure. Few volcanic systems in California combine all of these elements so clearly. This is why the most active volcanic danger in California may not be the snow-covered peaks that dominate public imagination. It may be this low volcanic field hidden within the Salton Basin, where tectonic rifting, magmatic heat, and economic dependency intersect. The threat is not dramatic because of how the volcano looks. It is dangerous because of where it is, what lies beneath it, and how much depends on the stability of the land around it. Salton Buttes remains one of the clearest reminders that volcanic hazards are not defined by height, beauty, or visibility. They are defined by active geology and human vulnerability. In that measure, this little-known volcanic field stands among California's most consequential hazards, a restless magmatic system beneath one of the state's most strategically vital regions. The volcano most people are ignoring may be the one capable of causing some of the widest disruption in the state. And until the public recognizes that the greatest volcanic risks do not always rise as towering mountains, Salton Buttes will remain one of California's most dangerous hidden threats. If you found this video valuable, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and tap that hype icon so this video can reach more people. The more awareness we spread about hidden geological risks like Salton Buttes, the better prepared communities can be for the hazards quietly building beneath the surface.